Welcome to the Family Brand Show. We're Chris and Melissa Smith of FamilyBrand.com, husband and wife, parents of 5, and we want to help you take back your family and to live life on your terms.
And we know being a family can feel really overwhelming. Parents tell us they feel like they're being pulled in a million different directions. It's so challenging to navigate the uncertainty and all the chaos that's happening in the world right now.
And that's why we want to bring you every single week actionable tips and strategies that you can implement in your daily life to become a better parent, to become a better spouse, and to build a stronger family. And look, there's never been a better time and a more important time than right now to take back your family. You can define what your family stands for, or the world is going to do it for you. And the world needs strong families now more than ever. And it starts right here with your family.
Okay, today I have a special guest with us, Tim Wright. Tim, welcome to the Family Brand Podcast.
Thank you. So good to be with you.
And this doesn't happen very often, but I don't know Tim personally, but I learned about his books and some of the work that he's done, and I was like, ooh, that's really interesting. And I feel like I would like to learn more about that, and I'm sure that the Family Brand listeners would too. So this is going to be, as we go, like I'll be learning right along with everyone else listening. So thanks, Tim, for joining us again today.
You bet.
Okay, Tim, tell us, what do we need to know about Tim Wright before we jump in today?
Well, I grew up in Minneapolis, so I'm a Minnesota boy. And then about 40 some years ago, I finished up seminary. I studied to be a Lutheran pastor and was called here to Phoenix, Arizona to be a pastor. So I was a pastor for 41 years in two different churches. The first church I was at for 20 some years, and then they started the second church that I was a part of. So I was with some of those folks for a long, long time. And I retired in March of last year. And about 20 years ago, I met a man by the name of Dr. Michael Gurian, who is known as the father of the modern day boy movement. And he's done a lot of work in brain science research, how boys learn, how girls learn. And he and I became friends. And so in addition to doing ministry, one of my passions became, well, how do we help our boys and girls and our families grow to be all that they dream they can be, or to use religious language, all that God created them to be. And so a lot of my work involved that. And of course, now that I've retired, I've been able to really focus on that full time. My wife and I have been married 46 years. We have 2 kids. We have 5 grandkids and 2 dachshunds. So we're still in the parenting business with our dogs and raising our dogs. Yeah.
We have some friends who just got the same breed, just got a puppy, and we spent some time with them over New Year's, and my kids will not stop talking about.
Oh, they are just the best. Yeah, they are the best.
We already have 2 dogs though, so we're like, no, we're not getting another puppy.
Yeah, wait a while.
They're working on us though. Okay, there's so much there that even just in that little intro, that I'm like, oh, I could take this so many different directions. One, this might feel like a tangent, but I was just having this conversation with my oldest boys. I have boys who are 2 days ago, my second just turned 17. So I have an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. And they are so fun. And it's been so fun watching them grow up and watching them learn and make mistakes and, be the parent along the whole ride. And something interesting we were talking about a couple of days ago, actually, is what does it mean to be a man in today's world? Because as they're observing some of their friends, they think maybe I'm not probably even going to say this politically correct, but they're like, I don't think they're acting like men as in relation to like the girls that they're wanting to date and the things that they're doing. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I know that is the reality for these boys growing up, is how do I become a man, and what does that mean? Yeah. Could you offer any insight to that? What would you say?
That is one of the areas where I have really spent a lot of my time, along with Dr. Gurian. It's interesting. Michael has been doing this stuff for over 40 years. And he and I have been doing a podcast called the Wonder of Parenting Podcast. We've been doing that for 7 years. And most of the questions that we get are about boys, from moms about how to raise their boys. And of course, as your sons are saying, we're living in a cultural moment where we are having a hard time defining what manhood looks like, what male looks like, masculinity looks like. Of course, right now, unfortunately, toxic and masculinity seem to be almost wedded together, as if to suggest that being male in and of itself is toxic. And it's an unfortunate term because, yes, there are men out in our culture who are toxic, but masculinity or being male is just as sacred as being feminine or female. And part of what's happened over the years is we have lost sort of a definition, a moral compass for what it means to be a man. Many, many centuries, millennia ago, tribal cultures recognized that there's a difference between growing up to be a man and growing up to be a woman. Women have an internal biological compass. Around the age of 13, they begin to menstruate. Their body tells them something's different. They can have babies. Guys don't have that experience. They certainly see their bodies are changing and so on. But so rather than an internal biological sort of rite of passage, these tribes created rites of passage for boys because they knew that boys needed to be trained to be good men. And so throughout history, there have been various ways that we've trained our boys to be good men, instilling in them the values of society believes in, compassion, love, service, graciousness. But we haven't really had those kinds of rites of passage for generations in the United States of America, with the exception of getting a driver's license, but that's just to learn to drive. Or in some religious faiths, like our Jewish friends, they have a bar mitzvah. In some Christian denominations, they have confirmation or a program like that. But we've really lost this intentional training of boys to be men. And so a lot of our boys feel lost. And one of the things that we know is boys know they need to be men. And if someone doesn't teach them how to do it, they're going to figure it out on their own. And most of the time, they're going to go to the wrong sources to figure it out, unless they've got good, strong families and religious communities around them, or sports communities, whatever. And so it's become really important for us to talk once again. What does a good man look like? What are the character qualities of a good man? And I'm going to toot my own horn for just a moment. I've been writing this middle school fantasy adventure series called The Adventures of Toby Baxter, precisely with that in mind. Certainly girls are going to love the books. But in the back of my mind, my primary audience is that 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old boy who, through Toby, is going to learn what are the character qualities of being a good man, and what does strength look like? What does weakness look like? What does it mean to win? What does it mean to lose? What does it mean to be compassionate and empathetic and yet still be a biological male? So your sons are onto something, and they're at that point where there's this internal longing. I'm sure they're getting really good advice from you guys, but there's this longing in boys. I want to be a man, and we're seeing a lot of really bad images of that right now in culture. And then once in a while, when you see the good one, you say, wow, that seems so rare. And it shouldn't be. It should be the normal. To be wise, I've said compassionate before, to be gracious, to be forgiving, to have substance in your soul so that you know what you believe and yet you still remain curious because you know you can't possibly know everything. And so those are some of the things that are happening in culture. And when we lose our males, everybody suffers, right? Women get hurt in the process. Power structures begin to become controlling and authoritarian. And so we need to raise good boys and good men. And I'm appreciative for podcasts like yours that are helping parents think about these things.
Well, thank you. And I want to, again, so many different directions we could go with that. I want to circle back in a minute to the books that you read, because I think we could spend some time there. But before we get there, a couple of things that you said, I think 100% the ideal setting in which boy can learn to become a man is in the home, as
Right.
you said. And I think, as I'm thinking about my boys, I think maybe what they're struggling with is, how do I be this strong, convicted, and maybe not even struggling with, but that they see these two sides at play, this strong, convicted man,
Mhm.
but also be the compassionate and loving, and where is the balance in both? And so, um, what an opportunity we have
Well,
as parents.
we do, and our boys actually have inside of them some of that stuff that we can pull out.
Hmm.
We sort of have this. And I'm going to date myself now. For me, when I was growing up, the man was John Wayne. Just this big, strong cowboy type figure,
Yes.
stoic. I remember years and years ago, my wife and I we were at a movie. It was an Agatha Christie movie, of all things. And in the scene, this guy shoots himself in the leg because he needs to come across as injured, and he's screaming in pain. And I whispered over to my wife, John Wayne wouldn't have even flinched at that. And so that was sort of the view of masculinity, which isn't masculinity at all, right? It's just such a small part of it. But
Yeah.
inside each of our boys is their personality, their gifts, their talents. And, there are some boys who are just very soft spoken and quiet. That was my father-in-law, very quiet man. And yet he built a multi-million dollar business, but extremely quiet. My dad was more boisterous. He was a salesman. He's that proverbial guy. He could sell ice to Minnesotans, and he could sell anything. And he was sort of this tough guy, and was raised by an alcoholic father.
Wow.
But no matter what the story, no matter what the personality, it's the character qualities that we want to build around that. If you're an outgoing, really strong, active kind of person, are you doing it out of love? Are you doing it out of grace? If you're shy and quiet, how can you make what you believe vocal for people? And so we want to, I think we always want to sort of be careful of saying to our boys, a man is this, because men aren't always strong, but men are different from women. And what does that mean biologically? What does it mean physiologically? What does it mean? And most of all, character. It's if we can start with character, all the other stuff sort of works itself out.
Yeah, I love that. Start with character. What would you, as you briefly mentioned previous, you have done a lot of work on these rites of
Yeah,
passage.
yeah.
Tell me it sounds like you've done a lot of research across many different cultures, what that could look like. And maybe you can speak a little bit about that. And then also, I'd love to talk about, what can modern day rites of passage look like for these
Mhm.
boys becoming men?
Well, so one of the things that I really appreciate about working with Dr. Gurian is he wants to move things from sort of the storytelling into some practical things that we can do for parents. So he and I have actually written several different rites of passage that you can use in religious settings, or you can use just father, son, mother, daughter. TimWrightBooks.com, TimWrightBooks.com. And there's a place that says resources on there, and there are all kinds of different rites of passage that you can use. Let me give you an example of one that I did for my son. This
Please.
isn't quite a rite of passage that you would do with a younger child, which like 13, 14, which we have a bunch of. But when my son became a father for the first time, I decided I wanted to do a ceremony to celebrate that. That's a pretty exclusive club, the Dad's Club, right? And so he knew none of this was going to happen. So I contacted my dad, who was alive at the time, his father-in-law, who was alive at the time, my brother, and then a guy who'd been a mentor to my son. And I asked them to write a letter to my son of how much they appreciate him, drawing out his strengths, what they see in him, and then just 3 lines of blessing or affirmation, whatever word you want to use. I spent several weeks every single day writing in my own handwriting in a journal everything about my life, everything about my life with him, what his grandparents, his granddads in particular, were like, and so on. And then that was all the behind the scenes stuff. So then I went over to his house one day and knocked on the door, and this was a surprise, and he hates surprises. He said, "What's wrong with mom?" Didn't even say hi. He says, "What's wrong with mom?" I said, "Nothing's wrong with mom." "All right, so what's wrong with you?" "Nothing's wrong with me. I just want to take you to lunch." "Why? What's wrong? Tell me what's wrong. We're not going to lunch till you tell me what's wrong." So his wife, who knew what was going on, said, "Mike, they want to have something fun planned for you, so just go." So it took him about 20 minutes for his adrenaline to lower. So we had lunch together, and my dad made chili, and we just sat around the table and we talked like guys talk.
And all those men were there?
All the men were there.
Okay.
Yep. And then we got into a circle in the living room, and each of the men read their letters to Mike. And then in this case, because we're a religious family, we got in a circle, laid hands on him, and prayed for him. Now, the way we've written it, you don't necessarily have to do that part, but you can get in a circle and just give affirmations to him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, part of a rite of passage always, when in the tribes, when a boy was sort of welcomed into manhood, they would mark him in some way. They might, put a little face paint on him. They might actually cut his arm with a little cut so that the scar would remind him of that moment he became a man, whatever it might be.
Sure.
So my son loves tattoos, so I went to this tattoo artist and had a fatherhood tattoo designed. And so he and I went that evening and had a tattoo put on ourselves to symbolize that moment of celebrating him becoming a dad. And that's just an example of what a rite of passage can look like. It can be very simple. And you could use that model when a son turns 13, 16, or a daughter turns 16, 18. But we have all those resources at timwrightbooks.com. And so that's, in essence, what they look like. Now, very quickly, usually when you do one for, say, a 13, 14-year-old boy or girl, you'll go a little longer. And sometimes they can last a few weeks, sometimes a few months, sometimes a few years, depending on what you want to do and the strategy. But essentially, the point of a rite of passage is to get usually boys with men, girls with women, and share experiences and begin to pour into the boy, pour into the girl. This is what a good man looks like. This is what a good woman looks like. And we are here to surround you and walk you through that journey.
That's beautiful. I love the imagery you created about you with your son and all these important men in his life. Like, that must have been so special.
It was. And my son's not a very verbal guy, although he does a podcast for a living. But he did send me just a quick little note, and how much he appreciated the journal and appreciated the moment. And knowing my son and the few words that he used, it was a profound moment for him. And we had a chance then to do that for my son-in-law when he became a dad for the first time. So his dad was a part of it. Did that in Hawaii, by the way. And
I was telling Tim before we hit record how my kind of background was us in Hawaii. I was telling him how we both love Hawaii.
We do. Yeah, so that's a little bit of rite of passage. It's a intentional time set aside to train our boys, to train our girls to be good men and women, to give them a moral compass, to build in them character. It doesn't, when a 13-year-old boy finishes something like that, he is not automatically a man, obviously. You're planting seeds and you're making a commitment. I'm going to walk with you now through these next 10, 15 years of your life, because you're going to have a lot of learning. You're going to have some successes. You're going to have some failures. I'll be here with you to love you through all of it.
That's really beautiful. And I love that you're intentionally creating the opening and the conversation that this is happening. This is what we're doing. And I'm going to lead you. I'm going to be here for you. What a gift.
Yeah. And it really is. I had the chance to we created a program for churches. So I've taken for about 10 years, boys through it at our church. And just to see, because, most dads don't know what questions to ask their sons. So we create the questions for dads and create the experience. But just to see these dads and their sons have these important moments together that they might not do intentionally. It's really deeply moving. And to see the same thing happen then with moms and their daughters, which tends to happen a little bit more than dads and sons. But still, to be intentional about it and say, let's talk about what kind of person you're going to be as you grow up.
I love it. I can't wait to do more for my own kids. We one thing that we have done is we've we've taken our kids as they turned 11, 13, and 15. We've taken them on these little trips.
Yes.
And the first one is focused on our relationship with them, kind of like you were describing, setting it up like, hey, you're entering teenage land. And more than anything, we want to know that me and dad are here for you. And that trip, we kind of plan it all around their interests and their likes. And then their next trip is all around like their spiritual self. We've taken them.
Yeah.
One of them, we lived in Hawaii at the time. So one of our sons, we went camping on the beach, and then we just so happened on that same little weekend, it was just like a night away. There was what is that? It was a Christian church there on the North Shore that we were not members of, but we saw that they were having like a worship service as we were driving by. And so we were like, you know what? This is all around our spiritual development and growth, relationship with God. Let's pop in. And so
Yeah.
we popped in there, and we still talk about that. Like they sang a lot of songs that were not familiar to us, but just to be in community with other believers,
Yeah.
that was super cool. And then we haven't executed on the last ones yet. We have that on the calendar to do this year. Is the last one is supposed to be about serving and how can they serve,
Yeah.
look a little more outward looking. And so we've been looking like, okay, is there a humanitarian trip we could do, or what can that look like? But I love yours brings even more intention about like what are the actual conversations we're having, and how
Yeah.
are we
Well, I mean, everything you're doing, it's spot on. I mean, what you have done, whether you realize it or not, is you sort of created the rhythm of a rite of passage over a period of time. And, any moments that we spend with our kids to just talk about important things is so important. And if I could just say for a moment too, there are a lot of boys out there, girls too, who don't have, say, a dad in their lives or an active dad in their lives. So
Yeah.
one of the things that we really encourage, especially single moms, to do is if you've got a son, look for that father figure for your son, or father figures. Could be a brother, it could be an uncle, it could be a soccer coach, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
who can take a son through that process for you. Because there is something, moms bring a lot to the table for their boys, but moms are not men, right? And so boys need some masculine energy, and they need to see good models of masculine energy. And that's why we try to encourage boys, not just their dads, but other men, to be around them as well. Because dad's one version of a man. There are other
Mhm.
versions out there that help the son begin to see a broader range of what it does mean to be a man. It's not just John Wayne, right? So, congratulations to you. Fantastic.
What you're saying is so true. Sometimes we tell our kids stories about how, you grow up and whatever you see in your house is what you think is quote
Yeah,
unquote normal. So I love what you're saying there about like getting a broad perspective of what different men, how they interact with the world,
that's
how they
right.
interact with you. I think that that's really smart. And I love that you pointed that out, because anyone listening, I would hate for someone to feel like, well, I can't do this because, my kid's father isn't involved in their life. So I
Right.
love that you're calling that out and say like, no, there's other ways you can achieve this, even if their dad isn't involved,
That's
like
right.
those good men in your
Yeah.
life to help achieve this.
Yeah, that's right. And they're there. So it's just a matter of sort of looking for them, praying for them, whatever it
Yeah.
works for you, but they're there.
Thank you for adding that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's circle back to the books, because I have a 10-year-old boy. And
Yeah.
so, we've been talking about my older boys, but I'm like, oh wait, I have a younger boy too, and younger girls. I have 9, 10, and 13 are the other three. So I love this thought of meeting them through these books and like
Yeah.
starting to develop them into these readers, which I think is amazing.
That's right.
But also instilling these bits of character through the books. Tell us a little bit more about what inspired you. I'd love to hear what
Yeah.
inspired you to write the book, and then more about the book.
Yeah. So I was inspired to write the book really by three things. I have been a lot of my life a big fan of things like Lord of the Rings, books like Lord of the Rings, C.S. Lewis, The Chronicles of Narnia, Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, all these books that just take us into these different worlds. And many of them like C.S. Lewis's works on the Chronicles of Narnia and even the Lord of the Rings and so on, are books that take spiritual principles and put them into these magical worlds to help us wrestle with real life issues, but to do it sideways rather than just straight at us. So I've been a big fan of what fantasy literature can do.
Mhm.
Um, I also wanted to find a way to take this rite of passage stuff and put it into engaging, fun, fast-paced books that would be my primary audience would be boys, but there are strong female leads in these books as well, so that girls would enjoy them as well. To be able to begin to really, through reading these, what will ultimately be 7 books, take them through a rite of passage experience. So
Mhm.
each book, Toby is given a compass when he goes into this magical land of Riverhome. The compass guides him, and each of the compasses, whatever they have 4 letters, and each one's a word. So the first compass he gets is hero, and then he's got to define what does it mean to be a hero. And then the next one is good, and then it's wise, and then it's love, and grit, and true, and so on. So each book, he's not only having an adventure, but he's sort of being stretched with the question, well, how are you going to respond to this? What kind of a man you're going to be when you grow up? And this is a chance for you to practice that. And so the book's filled with a lot of humor. Toby Baxter hates reading books. I wanted to sort of speak, boys and girls are not reading like they used to for pleasure. And boys read less and less well than girls. They're very, very far behind in literature and literacy skills. And so I thought, well, I want to start with a character who doesn't like to read books.
Yeah.
And I actually started with a moment that I remember vividly in high school when we were assigned to read The Hobbit. And at that point, I didn't like to read either. And I just remember thinking, I don't want to read this book. And so the book kind of opens with Toby being assigned The Hobbit and doesn't want to read it. And then throughout the course, every book that of the Toby Baxter series references a book of some
Oh.
sort and kind of plays off of that, with the
Mhm.
exception of book 4, which plays off the movie The Princess Bride, because it's sort of Toby's little love story. He falls in love with a girl, and so each compass then sort of directs them. There are people to guide him. He comes face to face always with a moment when he's either going to go sort of to the dark side or he's going to choose the good,
Mhm.
and how he wrestles with that. And then the other reason why I wrote the book is I wanted to sort of do something for my grandkids. So my grandkids are all in the books.
That's
And
fun.
he goes when Toby goes to Riverhome through his closet, the river elves, the 5 river elves, are my 5 grandkids. And so I've sort of, they were much younger when I started writing the book, and tried to take some of their personality types and put them in. And then as the series goes on and I get to know my grandkids better, more and more of their personality comes out. So they're pretty much a quick read. They're all under 200 pages, a lot of dialogue, and my hope is that either kids will read them or parents will read them with their kids.
Mhm.
Let's read this together. And to help kids sort of rediscover the joy of reading books just to read books, and maybe try to get them out of their screens, uh,
Yeah.
get them out of their heads right now and back into imagination and curiosity and joy, just for the sheer experience of it.
That's amazing. I am excited to read some of those with my
Yeah,
boy.
so I've got 4 out right now. The book 5 comes out in March of 2026, and then there'll be 2 more. I've already started working on book 6, and then kind of know where I'm going with book 7. For the most part, I just sat down and I'm just writing. I don't really have a plot in mind. I just sort of see where it takes me. But now I know I've got an end game in sight. So I'm trying to sort of figure out where's the arc going to finally take Toby. And the other thing I should say about Toby is he doesn't like to read books, but he does like to read comic books. And he's a big Marvel fan. And so I sort of play off of some of that too. What does a real hero look like versus Spider-Man or Thor or whatever it might be? Yeah.
How old are your grandkids now?
So my oldest is 16. She just got her driver's license. So I have a 16. I have a couple boys from different families that are both about 15. And then the youngest two are like 11 and 10. So basically 10 to 16 right now.
Right. Right in there.
They're
Yeah.
right in there, right. And if you ask me if any of them read my book, the answer is no. None of them have read my book.
That's like my kids with whenever I'll just give this example. Chris, my husband, who I usually co-host with, he's like he's spoken on stages all over the world. But the minute he like starts to talk to the kids, they're like, "Oh, here we go.
Yeah, that's right.
Conversations with Chris." That's what
Yeah.
they call it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, being a pastor and having pastors' kids and grandkids. Oh, Grandpa's preaching again. Oh boy. Yeah.
It happens, but that's not a reason to not do it. Like we
That's right.
still,
That's
as
right.
parents, we still
Yep.
we
Yep.
still
And they're all
gotta
so
do
excited to know that they're in these books, and I've got their little boxes they're going to get from us when we aren't here anymore, and all the books will be in there, and then I've written several short stories around that people can get for free on the website as well.
Awesome. And people can find all of the material that we've referenced today at timwrightbooks.com.
That's right, timwrightbooks.com, and I think there's a link there to the podcast if people are interested in that as well. That comes out once a week. And yeah, so rites of passage are there. There's free stuff available there, and they can sign up if people want to. They can sign up. I do a Substack once a week where I sort of talk about issues that have to do with boys and girls and growing up and how culture's shaping them. All those things that we think about, that we're concerned about as parents, and positive things that we can do to have greater influence in the lives of our kids. Right now when so much of AI and algorithms are shaping their perspectives, and how do we sort of take back filling their minds with good stuff?
Awesome. That's the years ago when we first started the podcast, that's the little subtitle of our podcast currently still is Family Brand. Take back your family.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. And you're as parents, your generation is facing things that I didn't have to face when I was a kid, and didn't have to face a lot of when my kids were little. Mainly it was video games, which could be bad enough, especially for my son who was locked in his closet all the time playing video games. But now, trying to navigate, and my own grandkids are going through this. When do you give them an iPhone? When do you allow them to have certain apps, and what kind of freedom do you give them? And how do you, once you let Pandora out of that box, how do you keep it tamed? And these are issues that, God bless all you parents walking this road, who have this passion to raise good, noble, compassionate kids in a world that just has all kind of grievance and outrage screaming at them all the time. Yeah, take back your kids.
Thank you, Tim. I'm so glad I got to have this conversation with you today. I will leave, wanting to implement new things with my family, improve on some things we're doing. Would you have any final words? And maybe that was it. That was beautiful what you just said, but would you have any final words for listeners?
I think one final thing that is a crucial part of a rite of passage, and good parents do this, but always a reminder: don't let a day go by when you don't look your child in the eyes and say, "I love you and I'm proud of you." Mm-hmm. And that kind of language all the time, just a hand on the shoulder, a hug, "I love you, I'm proud of you," that instills character more deeply than anything. To know that our kids are loved, and no matter what you do and no matter what decisions you make, that will never change. And if we can raise kids who are loved, can protect them from a lot of stuff.
Well said. And it's easy to, look up and realize like, oh, we've just been so busy. Maybe I haven't taken the time to do that today, right. Or maybe it's been several days. Excuse me. So that's a beautiful reminder. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for the important work you're doing. It's good stuff.
Okay, everyone, go find Tim at timwrightbooks.com.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Tim.
All right. So that is it for today's episode of the Family Brand Podcast.
But before you go, we have something fun for you.
Yeah. Like if you've ever wondered, okay, so how's our family culture actually doing? We've got an incredible quiz for that.
Good news, it's quick, it's free, and when you're done with that quiz, we'll even email you this awesome PDF full of practical ways to strengthen your family culture right away.
So all you have to do is go to familybrand.com/quiz, take the quiz, grab the PDF.
We'll see you next time.